We've got 16 caves just on this reserve. Pretty tricky terrain to walk over. These boulders get slippery, especially over 300 known caves. It's a bit like a sponge around here. Our fossils of dinosaurs, we don't have dinosaurs here. One really good reason. All of this. And you'd have seen Diprotodon, the big wombat-looking creature. Megafauna, he's actual size as well. Big bones come out of the ground. So this is Mitchell's Cave on the right. You'll have driven here on the Mitchell Highway today. One of our first Surveyor Generals of New South Wales. So lots in this area. Another thing to know about all these rocks here is that it's an ocean. And when the ocean or the coral reef is transformed, second time, where else do you go? Yeah. Alrighty, so that is the time in Earth's history when fish appear in the fossil record. Now our rock here is known as early Devonian, so we don't have fish fossils here. In fact, we have no bone fossils in this limestone. That's in the clay, you'll see it in mine later. And hopefully we'll point out some features, so if you've ever been to other river caves, perhaps the famous ones in Geological, directions. So this is the other way the water comes in. Now, did anyone get drip down here? Quite. We're dodging drips. Things that are rotting in the topsoil above the rock. Pass through the soil, turn into essentially a weak carbonic acid, and it's still dripping. In fact, it's dripping down here. So if you're into using that, well, this is a fallen piece from it that's still dropping active crystal. That does look a little bit like a sausage dog. Particularly active, there is a nice fresh piece of crystal, even if you swivel. How high it goes? That has been dripping for a very, very long time. In fact, well, it's really hard to stand and watch this, so I'm going to drop this little fact in so that you can continue to figure. Stalactites grow at a rate of about 1 cubic centimetre every 100 years. In perfect conditions. We'll talk more about perfect conditions. See how they grow in lines? Mother Nature's really good at getting water through solid rock, but she does like a path of least resistance. So you'll often find crystal growing along. Get one? Excellent. Yes. There's lots of these little holes and pockets everywhere. But how good a sculptress is Mother Nature? Now, if you're not quite here and you can't see the shape, so once you know the spot, even without my torch, that'll show up with a camera flash or even the naked eye as well. Look at the oldest deposit at the lowest point. We can at least narrow the figure down and get perhaps an imitation here. For now, it's a mystery. So, it's really hard to date. I'll remind you of that growth rate, a centimetre a century, in perfect conditions. Because it's, well, the odd thing about this law, is because what does it rock? So if the water can wear away the rock, it definitely undoes all the work of the crystal. That's one theory of why it's very dull at the bottom. We think the water will tell you if this drips solidly in perfect conditions, this method push these two deposits together has to squish this rock for a long time. So it's no longer truly porous. It cannot let water through very easily unless there's an established crack. So that is also. And this is the active side. Not even dripping down here. And it was dripping into this rim pool. And you could see the little splashes. It was full to the rim, which meant every so often it would wash down, flow down the flowstone. So it's only just a recombined version of parts of the rock above and around them. So we'll fire up more lights. Now the reason I pause here, and just the same as above, the lowest point is the biggest piece, but something's happened. This crack has clogged up. It's stopped. One, those baby stalactites are all active. And oh, there you go. Geology just happened. You see that little drip? Now underneath. So the reason we can date these is people involved with the case for a really long time can remember when they were not there. So we see the ones at the front. They're dripping too much. So they're wearing themselves away. So even the perfect conditions has to be that drip rate, not whether this is dry or wet. It's about the drip rate as well. So. And then the one at the back, that's up there, that's crystal too. What does that one remind you of? Shrinkage cracks in a dry riverbed. That's essentially what you're seeing in cross-section. So those shrinkage areas as each side. Excellent. This is where he earned his speleologist type, but it was at least first written about by a European explorer in 1828. Now there is a bit of breakage around here. You might also spot, if you're looking around, something to read that does indeed say J-O.S-I-B-B-A-L-D. It's a tricky shelf of rock.
It's called Headache Rock.
Headache rock, for obvious reasons. Did you look up there? Slightly acidic water has been coming down through what started as what we call them bell holes. Little pockets and divots in the ceiling. Flagon, which wasn't around in 1895, I'm fairly confident. Then we can come back out and I can show you some of the Devonian fossils. Everyone's... So, there's two more little steps down here. And then in the floor of the cave, which exposes the water table, unless there's a severe drought. Starts. On the way up though, a little word of warning. I've broken the rule of the cave already. Everyone does. All of this behind me, it's all crystal. And there's only 2 points. This is not going to get this inside. So it might have closed up recently, but this is crystal and small groups. Because it gets cozy. So we have a crystal taken underneath us. So we just don't know. We're planning some research. We're trying to get just above and up here. This line of failed stalactites, that crack closed up very early on. But it does look a little bit like a big gecko. For the kids, do you like feathered frog? Some older ones. Apparently this is a wombat. The face in the head. So that's been pointed out to people for decades. This was known as Lady. Yep, MIN isn't up there.
It's the Ladies' Cave.
So we don't know who MIN is, but it's the joke that it's mini, because this is perfect reverb. Now all I'm going to say is, I used to say, is anyone a singer? And everyone goes, it sounds amazing. All I'm going to say is I'm the first one down the stairs from Thunder Cave. If you'd like. See those little bubbly, if you imagine a bubbly and corals, ancient corals. This is where I say look with your eyes, not with your hands. You've got very radial shapes here. They tend to be cross sections of stalks of corals, but then you also have more obvious seashells. Bivalve mollusks. You will also, if you go on a fossil trail, I can't find any gastropods there. Find them on the fossil trail walk above ground though. We've got some little cone shells up there. And in fact, well, here we go. Oh, so we have coral stalk, and there's a bubbly bit there.
Can we ask you to take it?
Yeah, I'll take it for you.
Yeah, the camera steady and flies crawling all over you.
Yeah.
How long is the system?
Particular area. Do any of the adults know what phosphate was used for?
Fertiliser and gunpowder sort of.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Fertiliser and explosives and things like your matches and stuff like that. Today we still use it in our fertiliser. It's great for growing our veggies, but it's used in a couple of other things too, like our washing powders and toothpaste. Parents, but
We just buy phosphate-free toothpaste.
I was just about to say that. Phosphate is great for growing our veggies, but it's really no good for our waterways. So they have taken your pelicans and your seagulls and things like that, but it's still poo. Okay. And that's where you get the little flooding line along here, and of course the water sat for a while, so it formed the crystal surfaces on the water, and as they got heavy they sunk to the bottom. You would have seen the crystal surfaces at the bottom of the well, on top of the well. Well, that's exactly how this is formed, the same. So they just sink once they get heavy, and of course you can see there's another little flood period and so on. I think all the babies are learning to fly now. See, there is a lot of phosphate actually left in the walls, and we wondered why, because you know that's come in and fund the mine itself. And of course you've got to show them something, don't you? So they bring it to you, and again that made it a lot harder to sort it and turn it into... So with the crystal being there, it sort of became a bit of a pain. And then the government said, oh no, we still want you to go on his own in a week, taking it easy. So 6... 260,000 years. And you've seen the crystal rafts on the surface, so you can imagine it would take a long time for that. Particles in the mud were actually facing the wrong way. They should have been facing true north, and they were facing south. So when this mud has rolled in, and they think that is what's occurred, that the mud's rolled in, it wasn't just here, they believe that there was a polarity change at that time. So for that to be the case, everything was in reverse. And they do think we are in the middle of a polarity change now, which would explain some of our weather patterns. Our swallows never left this year. They normally always leave for the winter, and they never left this year. So that was a bit of confusion for them. We had such an extended summer that I guess they just got mixed up. But besides the poles being different, there's bones starting to turn up now, and the paleontologists are rubbing their hands. They weren't that interested in the phosphate being quite dry and arid, and so they couldn't survive. And the other reason is because when they closed this mine in 1918, they sold everything off and went bankrupt. Over, and this is where the crystal has sat and grown. But this is a tricky one, this one, because it's sort of hidden, isn't it? Because the colour of the mud is actually taken through with it. So even when you come all the way over here and stand on your toes.
So we'll move out of the way.
Sparkles on the roof. It's pretty though, isn't it? Okay, let's keep
Coal mines still use timber.
timber, do they?
Yep. They're Lincoln locks, so they're just a piece of 4x2 and they've got notches out
Oh,
and they just
okay.
lock into each other. But
Yeah,
they're
Cool.
built
You
on
can
the
see
exact
that
same
they've
design.
actually tried
Yep.
to
Pigsty
knock these
support.
ones out, and bones at the top. You see how different things are happening over the years. Now, Schroeder and Dem were two Germans, sent them back to Germany, and they thought they better head back in case they got arrested. She actually had a backward facing pouch, the same as a wombat. But for me, being a marsupial, and I'm on the and I knew they'd done it, but I'd forgotten. And seriously, study that and those sorts of things. And when the giant goanna was around and the giant wombat, so here's a giant snake.
Thousands and thousands.
Well, a particular like this one that's sticking out. There must have been a dingo of today. Have you kids seen a dingo?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know he's about this big, not real big, is he? So this is the dingo of today. Now what I usually do is I put my fingers on the dingo from ears to toes, and I come down to the echidna. Now can you imagine an echidna running around the size of that dingo?
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. I wonder if they had giant ants to feed him. He looks a little sad, but he's my favourite. And his facial features, they're bone. They're not keratin like the African rhino. So he's very unique to us. This is the giant kangaroo. Would you be roughly 6 foot?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you could imagine this gentleman standing, a leaf eater, and again, he would have been massively tall if you could stand him up. And he's got these long arms for grabbing the leaves and the branches and things like that. I usually call it the wine barrel era.
Was this one of the entrances? Or
Not so much the entrance, but because this is a sinkhole.
Yep.
But they did find a lot of fossils down in the tubing, you mean?
No.
Oh, the flooring.
The flooring, yeah.
Yeah, not sure. I think I don't know who was more scared, him or me. Looks like snails or whatever's been there, but
Yeah.
you know what? And we've tried sucking it out, which also doesn't work. One of our jobs every day to come up. You can be down here when it's 0.8, and even let it get to 5, so there's never any worry about it. Because different people have different susceptibilities. Now this particular cave doesn't have a lot of natural history. It's to the top here, and you can see it's like a shelf, and the stalactites have grown over. This is where the water was sort of filled to. And most of these crystals that you see down the bottom, which aren't here, you get your formations from your shores and stalactites. I can hear dripping. I can't see it.
Yeah. With rocks.
So when they blasted their way in here,
Yeah.
the first entrance they put. Now you know all about the stalactites and the.
Yeah, they were down
So
there.
they never came in here. Over in Western Australia, however, different tribes they didn't really use the caves. Not to say they never used maybe the front little bit as a bit of
There's all hanging there.
see all the white growth that's on the bottom sort of flowing down.
Yeah.
That's all relatively new from the last rains. I just wonder if we did have a bit of top up rain, if it would actually start it up again, so
That'd be
it
quick.
seems to be holding it.
Yeah, wasn't going to take much.
Of course, any of these ones, you put your torch behind.
Ew.
Now these ones down here, if I just point a little bit out the side from where I'm pointing,
Yeah.
and there is quite a few through there, and this big one on this side I called Jimmy Dream, because that was actually the son of James, who was the caretaker. His great-grandson sent it back for us to put on display, explaining that they didn't know better and that's coming down.
Yeah.
There's three reasons they gave me. I'm a little worried about that idea because it's so concentrated in one spot. I'm going through quite black into the growth part of it. And the other one was tree roots. Don't really wear the tree roots either, so I don't know what it is. Whether that actually leads to somewhere on the outside, I'm guessing maybe.
Still damp right down the bottom.
It did get damp. Because a lot of these ones were actually dripping down there. They did the massive upgrading of the...
Oh, just reach out and touch it.
I did have an Indian fella one day, and he reached up and that big one that's hanging sort of on the path, I was cranky and I said, just reached up and went whack. And I'm like, oh my God, can't do that. Oh, no, I understand. Because it's a pretty little... Usually the flies don't hang in here because it's too cool, but I think there might be mozzies. I can tell you when the wallaroo come bounding up at me, I was sort of here, and all I could think of...